Welcome back to the Grand Hotel and this year's Mackinac Island Policy Conference from the Detroit Regional Chamber. Happy to sit down now to talk with a guy who's been on Flashpoint a number of times over the years. I always look forward to talking to Matthew Schneider, former U.S. Attorney for the Southeast Michigan District, now with an attorney with Honigman. Matthew, so many things that I want to ask you because there's a million legal things that are popping up right now. But I want to start with your take. I would around any attorney, especially one who had worked in a federal capacity. I would have loved to have been in the room when you found out about the leak surrounding the Supreme Court decision that was about to drop, or well, we expect, we don't know yet, we're waiting.
Right.
And it could change. But what was your reaction when you realized that a decision had been leaked from the Supreme Court, which has always been so airtight?
Yeah, so pretty unprecedented. And we've had leaks out of the Supreme Court over time, but usually it's about what the decision might be or what the discussions are, but it's never been a draft opinion like this. It's really unprecedented. Yeah. And I know that they're doing an internal investigation at the Supreme Court. They're taking all those clerks and they're checking their telephone records. They want to know who they called, where they were. If I were investigating, I'd want to know all the key card access, who went in and out of the building when, who they were talking to. I'd pull all their emails. I'd get their personal cell phones. I'd look through all of that and find out, and that's usually how leaks are detected after the fact, how you find out who did it.
A number of people have, longtime court watchers, have assumed that there has to be a justice's hand in this somewhere, that clerks just don't wildcat like that on their own.
Well, neither do the justices, right? That's why it's unprecedented.
So unusual,
right, and there's different theories about who would have done this, and some people are saying that it's the people who don't support the overturning of Roe v. Wade. I actually think that the opposite would be true, right? Maybe it was somebody who was in the majority, and they thought, if I don't get this information out, some of the majority justices might spin off and change their minds. Right. So maybe if I leak this, it'll lock somebody into place.
Yeah, I remember hearing that theory, and that one seemed to make a fair amount of sense too.
Right.
Since then, we've had a number of Michigan county prosecutors who've insisted that they won't enforce that 1931 law to which Michigan would presumably revert if Roe v. Wade is overturned. I'm curious about your view of elected officials who, and of course there are a lot of laws on the books that don't get prosecuted often, right? This would be different from than
Right,
that.
Exactly. I mean, a prosecutor's duty is to follow the law and to enforce it as they believe it is appropriate to do so. And so having a blanket overview of I'm not going to do this or I'm not going to do that, that's also something that prosecutors generally don't do. But however, prosecutors also make discretionary calls, right? That they don't enforce certain laws because of their office resources or their office priorities. For example, a lot of people in Michigan don't enforce marijuana laws, right? No matter what they are. Marijuana is illegal federally, but federal prosecutors don't bring those cases because they think that's not where my priorities are. So you might hear some prosecutors thinking or saying, this isn't where my priorities are, so therefore I'll turn my attention to other things.
Weird, given that this is all very interpretive of whatever, however you believe about that 1931 law, and it's playing out as well. But how much does public opinion matter? We know that through most polls, our laws are not built on public opinion. But we know through most polls that about 75% of Michiganders, it seems, support Roe versus Wade. So should that matter too?
Well, maybe it should, maybe it shouldn't, but the fact is that county prosecutors are elected officials, right? And so are county judges, right? They all take politics into account in some capacity.
Yeah. Let's fast forward to the news that broke here yesterday involving the mayor, who, according to the Detroit News reporting, exposed a confidential FBI source in the course of this towing corruption investigation. The mayor says that he did expose this person, but had no idea it was exposing anything. He didn't realize that the person was a confidential source. Curious about your take on the whole thing.
So the mayor said that directly, and he was quite emphatic that he did not know this person was a confidential source. He said that repeatedly. I personally spoke with Mayor Duggan yesterday to make sure, and he told me the same thing. I don't believe Mayor Duggan would lie to me or to the public. I think we should give him the benefit of the doubt, and I don't see a motive for him to lie. I mean, think about it this way. The mayor doesn't want corrupt people in his city. he doesn't want corrupt leadership. So if he were to knowingly thwart an investigation by exposing who he believed as a confidential source, that would put the investigation on rails. I mean, or on in the backtrack. It wouldn't help. So it would be working against his own interests.
Well, I guess the most cynical reading would be it would only make sense if the mayor himself felt that he was in trouble and was trying to spread the word around. Yeah, he says he doesn't believe that he has not been told that he's the target of an investigation.
Right, and I've never seen any credible evidence that Mike Duggan has done anything corrupt or unlawful in that capacity when I was the U.S. Attorney. I mean, if you want somebody to blame Andre Spivey. I mean, he's the one who told the mayor I took a loan. A loan, it was a bribe, right? He accepted bribes, and who else is part of this problem? The corrupt towers. They're the people who are giving the bribes.
You spent a lot of time while you were in office dealing with corruption in Southeast Michigan.
Yes.
To, I believe, the Detroit News counting of it yesterday, it's over 100 corruption cases in recent years now that we've seen across Southeast Michigan. It's not just Detroit. Obviously, there's a lot of them in Macomb County that we followed, other places. How in the world can we get rid of this? At a certain point, it becomes cultural.
Yes.
It's just how things operate.
Yes, it is. And, you know, I've done many investigations where I've heard people talking about this, and they actually think that what they're doing is not a problem in some respects because everybody else is doing it. Well, that's really a breakdown of our society. I mean, it's more than just greed. It's other people being greedy and thinking that it's okay for me to get a piece of my pie. You know, it's really unacceptable, and unfortunately, Michigan has led the nation in the past for the number of bribery cases. And the bribe amounts, Devin, are really, they're small sometimes. I mean, I've seen people bribe for $200 or $500.
Why would their entire lives?
Why would you? Yes, exactly. So why throw away your entire career for a couple $100?
Well, I think that actually is testimony to what you're saying, and you know, I don't think that corrupt people necessarily look in the mirror and see a crook. They see somebody who's just doing it the way it's always been done.
Exactly. One of the problems with that theory is in America, we punish bribery and we punish corruption quite heavily compared to other countries. You know, in some countries, you might take a bribe. If you're an elected official, then they wash it away because you're an elected official. Here, the federal sentencing guidelines are actually set up to enhance the punishment because you're an elected official. So you'll actually get more of a punishment.
I'm always stunned, though, especially how much blood should be in the water by now. We've watched people marched off to prison for years,
yes,
and yet it continues. I've been to Russia a number of times.
Yes.
I always assume that there's a camera and a microphone in my hotel room because I'm a
absolutely.
traveling journalist.
Yes.
Same thing when I go to China.
Yes.
I don't understand how people who work in government in Southeast Michigan don't just assume there's a microphone somewhere.
Yeah.
You've listened to an awful lot of wiretaps.
I've heard a lot of wiretaps. I've heard a lot of people incriminating themselves in the conversations. It continues to happen. And let's just hope that we're making a dent in that and making it so that there's less of an incentive for somebody to commit a crime like that.
Is there evidence that we're making a dent in it? It
I
just
think
seems
so.
to go on.
I think so. It does. But again, I mean, you have to put this in historical perspective. Back in the 1940s, the mayor of Detroit, the prosecutor, the sheriff, they all went to prison for corruption. You know, dozens and dozens of police officers. I mean, it was a huge takedown and indictment of the system. We don't have those. What we have is one-off cases now. We've got a couple different people, setting Kwame Kilpatrick and his administration aside. We don't have that type of widespread corruption like we did in the 1940s.
And I did want to ask you about Kwame Kilpatrick, who is now out of prison and trying to sort of rehabilitate his life through with church work and the like. It's interesting, we've had a thing recently where I've realized that some people, some reporters in town who weren't here for all of that, see Kwame Kilpatrick as a kind of celebrity.
Yes.
They treat him as you know, it made news when he announced that he and his new wife were having a baby, and I thought,
right.
We're covering the Kardashians?
Right, he's just he's a normal person now, right? And you know, from that perspective, I didn't agree with that commutation, but what's done is done. That's water under the bridge. It was done under the president's constitutional powers. So let him go. I mean, God bless him. Have him go do his ministry, like develop his family, and just don't do this again. There's nothing else we can do. He's a free man, and he has all the rights to develop his business as he wants now.
But I imagine it bothers you that he has largely maintained his innocence. He says that he basically went to prison for having an affair, which kind of misses an awful lot of the case. And there's still a lot of money missing, isn't there?
Exactly, and that has not been forgiven, right? So his sentence was commuted, but he still has a felony conviction, and he still has to pay restitution to the city of Detroit.
Yeah. The last thing I want to talk to you about, your specialty has kind of become cyber criminality. And we are watching a horrendous run of all kinds of scams, and everything. The digital world has created such a playground for bad actors.
Yes.
But what we watch on this massive scale with businesses that are being held hostage to, we've completely shut down your computer system and you owe us such and such in Bitcoin. I mean, we are at a real crisis point.
It's larger than it's ever been before. We have more cyber attacks and ransomware than has ever happened. And that's a lot of what I do now, is help these businesses and companies get out of these problems. I mean, this is a business conference, and so people are concerned about the safety of their companies. You might get an email from somebody that's Devin Scillian with an M instead of an N, and you think it's from Devin Scillian. And the human eye isn't trained to follow up on that so well, and so you might wire Devin $1 million, and then you find out that was a mistake. And I've seen cases like that, or I've also seen cases where people actually infiltrate and take your email address and impersonate you, and then wind up extorting the company out of millions of dollars. So what companies need to do is have better training to make sure that they're aware of this, and also report this immediately. Call your law enforcement officers, call HR, make sure that you're taking quick action, because I found that if you get scammed out of a couple $1 million, if you don't solve this problem within about 48 hours, especially if that money is overseas, it's probably gone and you'll never get it back.
We see so many businesses capitulate
to
the demands, which only, of course, encourages further bad acting.
Yes.
But they don't feel like they've got any choice. Do they not have any other choice?
Some companies will just give up and they will pay the ransom. I've seen that happen before. That's especially a problem if it's a publicly traded company, or you've got a board of directors, or you've got shareholders, because you can't do that. You can't keep these things secret. You're accountable to your shareholders, and you can get in all types of other legal problems if you keep it quiet.
This also creates so much security, uncertainty, and worry around things like our electric grid. Like
exactly.
Hospitals,
Right.
On and on and on, all these different things that we really think of as infrastructure that kind of seem to be swinging out there in the wind.
Yes, absolutely. I think a lot of people are really asleep at the switch and not realizing how much of a problem this could be. So it's not just financial. These ransomware folks could just shut down your business and turn off the power to your business. And then what do you do then? Right? So that's why reporting to law enforcement or calling a cybersecurity specialist, or of course your attorneys to help you deal through those problems, is the best way to do it.
And a lot of businesses are they don't want the embarrassment or the public disclosure that they've been taken, because that seems to speak to a kind of internal business weakness.
It is, and I get a lot of calls from businesses because it's an attorney-client privilege and they want to be protected that way, and they're embarrassed.
Yeah.
They are too proud or embarrassed to admit that I'm an enormous company and I got hacked and I'm a victim.
You've usually got some pretty good, crazy stories about the wildest things that you've seen lately happening in the either hacking or the cyber world, or give me something that you've seen lately that just kind of blew your mind.
Without divulging any personal.
Yes.
So I've had a situation where the president of the company calls somebody and says, I need money, so wire me several $1 million. It's the president of the company. And so the person does it and then realizes that wasn't the president of the company. These hackers are so sophisticated they can impersonate somebody's voice. and that person thought it was actually the president's voice. It was the president. So that's a total level of sophistication. I mean, that could be artificial voice intelligence. It could be that type of digital manipulation, taking people's words and piecing them together into a sentence. Criminals are training people to impersonate people's voice. I mean, it's out of this world. So you've got to.
We've already told everybody, don't trust this email.
Right.
Don't trust a text.
Exactly.
You would think talking, okay, I'm getting this direct from the horse's mouth.
Yeah.
And it's not.
It's always good to double check.
Yeah, wow. Matthew, it's always really interesting to talk to you. I really appreciate the time.
Likewise.
Matthew Schneider, former U.S. attorney and now an attorney with Honigman. More to come here from the Policy Conference at the Grand Hotel on Mackinac Island.